Welcome to the world of science fiction Neon's Alien. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story from Neon's Alien universe. Chains rattled as the human was dragged into the bright alien arena. Eli Ward kept his eyes forward. His face was dirty, lips cracked from thirst, but his steps were steady. He didn't flinch. He didn't beg. Around him, thousands of alien voices shouted, cheered, and laughed. Strange creatures sat in high seats, their glowing eyes focused on him. Many had never seen a real human before. And now, they were here to watch one die. High above them, on a raised throne made of bones and crystal, sat Queen Virexa, tall, scaled, and cruel. She stood and raised one clawed hand. The crowd went silent. "This human," she announced, "dares to speak of peace, of mercy, of strength beyond weapons. So let us see how strong he truly is." She pointed at the center of the arena, where a massive metal cage stood behind a gate. "Tonight," she said coldly, "he faces the trial of beasts." The crowd roared again. Eli said nothing. The guard beside him smirked. "You'll last 5 minutes, Earthman. Maybe less." Eli turned and replied quietly, "We'll see." The floor opened. Giant doors groaned as the cage gate was pulled up. The inside was dark, hot, and filled with the smell of blood and metal. Eli stepped forward without being pushed. As he walked inside, he saw claw marks on the walls, burned bones on the floor, and chains broken in half. He had heard stories about the Queen's monster, how it had torn gladiators apart, crushed armored aliens, and even bit through energy shields. No one had ever walked out alive. As the cage door slammed shut behind him, Eli whispered to himself, "Time to meet the legend." The first few minutes were quiet, too quiet. The crowd grew restless. Then, a deep growl. From the shadows across the cage, something moved. Eli tensed. He couldn't see it fully yet, but he saw eyes, red, glowing, locked on him. The creature stepped forward. It was massive. 7 feet tall, with thick black skin like armor and sharp metal claws growing out of its hands. Its mouth was filled with jagged teeth. Tubes ran along its back and green lights blinked on its chest. Eli didn't move. The monster growled again and took another step. The crowd screamed with excitement. This was the moment they had waited for. Eli looked into the monster's eyes and saw something strange. Fear. Not wild rage. Not hunger, but pain and confusion. "Hey," Eli said calmly, "I'm not here to hurt you." The beast let out a warning roar. Eli stayed still. "I know you don't want this, I can see it. You're not a monster. Someone made you this way." The beast twitched. It grabbed its own head, shaking violently as if fighting something inside. Eli noticed something glowing behind its neck. A blinking device with tiny needles sticking into its skin. A control chip. Eli's mind raced. This wasn't a wild creature. It was controlled, forced to fight, and now it was breaking. He stepped forward slowly. The crowd gasped. "Come on," Eli whispered. "Let me help you." The beast roared, louder this time. It rushed at Eli, claws out. Eli ducked just in time. The claws scraped the wall. He rolled and turned. "I don't want to fight you." But the beast charged again, faster, stronger. Eli grabbed a broken pipe from the ground and swung it, not to harm, but to block. The metal hit the control chip on the beast's neck by accident. Sparks flew. The beast stopped mid-swing. Its breathing slowed. It blinked. Then, it stepped back. The crowd went silent. The monster looked at Eli again, but this time, its red eyes dimmed, its claws lowered, and slowly, it knelt. Queen Virexa stood up from her throne in shock. "What is this?" "A high officer whispered. "He's not fighting. He's taming it?" Eli lowered the pipe and walked toward the beast. He placed a hand gently on its shoulder. "You're free," he said softly. "You just don't know it yet." The monster made a soft rumbling sound. Not a growl, but something like a purr. The cage lights flickered, and for the first time in the Queen's arena, no blood was spilled, only silence and fear, not from the prisoner, but from the throne. The cage lights buzzed above Eli's head, casting flickers of pale yellow across the cracked floor. The alien crowd outside the bars didn't know how to react. Some shouted for blood, others fell quiet, watching with narrowed eyes. But inside the cage, all noise faded. It was just Eli, and the beast. They stood inches apart now, one human, one monster. But the strange thing? Neither moved to attack. Eli looked into the beast's eyes, not wild anymore, still red, but calmer, blinking, even, tired, like a soldier that had been fighting too long. Eli lowered his voice. "I saw the chip, back of your neck." The beast growled lightly. Eli didn't flinch. "They control you with it, don't they?" The creature turned its head, as if unsure whether to run, attack, or listen. Eli slowly walked around it, hands raised. "No sudden moves," he whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." As he reached the back of the creature's neck, he saw it clearly. A glowing metal chip, buried into thick skin, blinking red. Small wires ran into its spine. A control device. Half tech, half pain. Someone had turned this living creature into a puppet. Outside the cage, Queen Virexa rose from her throne. "He's touching it?" The officers looked confused. One muttered, "He should be dead." Another said, "That's not combat. That's communication." She narrowed her eyes. "End the test." "No, Your Highness. The people are watching." Eli pulled a tool from the hidden pocket in his boot, just a tiny repair spike meant for tech. But he was a mechanic, and he'd fixed worse. He leaned close to the chip. "Okay, big guy. This might hurt. Don't bite me." The beast made a low, uncertain growl. Then, still. Eli worked fast. He jabbed the spike under the panel and twisted. Click. The chip sparked. The beast tensed, its claws flexed, its eyes glowed brighter, then dimmed. It collapsed to its knees, breathing hard. Smoke rose from the chip, then silence. Eli stepped back, panting. The beast looked up. No rage, no violence, just awareness. It stared at him, chest rising and falling. Eli crouched down. "How long were they making you do this?" The beast didn't speak, but slowly it lifted one hand and pointed at its chest, then at the walls, then the broken bones on the ground. Eli understood. Too long. Suddenly alarms blared. The bars of the cage glowed. The gate began to open again. Guards stormed forward. Eli stood, ready to defend, but the beast moved faster. It leapt in front of Eli with a snarl. A warning. Do not touch him. The guards froze. Outside the cage, the Queen's expression twisted. Kill the beast. But the crowd didn't cheer. They whispered. They watched. Eli shouted through the bars, "This wasn't a trial. It was a setup. You made this creature into a weapon." One alien shouted back, "Then why didn't it kill you?" Another yelled, "What did you do to it?" "I didn't do anything," Eli said. "I listened." The beast turned and looked at him, then slowly bowed its head. Not in defeat, in trust. That single act made the arena fall into stunned silence. Even the Queen didn't speak. A camera drone floated closer, streaming everything live. Every planet watching, every city, every being who had heard that humans were weak, now saw something else. Not strength of muscle, but strength of heart. The guards lowered their weapons, the gates stayed open, and the Queen sat down, silently burning inside. She whispered to herself, "This human must not leave this cage alive." But, as the crowd rose to its feet and chants for Eli echoed through the arena, one truth became clear. The monster wasn't the one behind the bars anymore. The cage was still open, but Eli didn't step out. Neither did the beast. They stood side by side, one man, one monster, facing a world that had only ever known fear, power, and blood. Eli knelt beside the creature again. Let's take a look at that chip. The control device on the beast's neck was still sparking slightly, half destroyed, half active. The flesh around it was burned and swollen, as if the monster had been shocked every time it didn't obey. Eli had seen pain like this before, not in beasts, but in soldiers. He spoke gently. You were never a killer by choice, were you? The AT beast didn't reply, but it slowly turned its head toward him. Its eyes weren't red now. They were gray, clouded, exhausted, not glowing with rage, but waiting. In the stands, Queen Virexa stood frozen. She'd sent dozens of warriors into that cage. All of them had screamed. All of them had died. But now this human knelt beside the beast like it was a lost pet. One of her advisors leaned in. Shall we order them executed now? No, the queen said, watching Eli closely. Not yet. I want to see what happens. When the human believes he has won. Eli pulled a tiny tool from the lining of his shirt, thin as a needle, sharp as a whisper. A micro cutter. He began removing the control chip piece by piece. The beast didn't move, didn't growl. Not once. Just slow breathing, a light tremble. Then, when Eli popped the last piece out, the creature exhaled. Long and low, a sound like relief. Eli sat back on the dusty floor. That's it, he said. You're free. The creature tilted its head. Then it did something no one expected. It lowered itself and curled around Eli protectively, like a guard shielding its leader. Gasps echoed across the arena. Far across the galaxy, on countless screens and hollow feeds, people watched the moment. The beast, once feared as unstoppable, was now gentle, calm, obedient, not to force, not to pain, but to kindness. In a side tower above the arena, a young alien servant secretly streamed the footage to an underground resistance network. They need to see this, she whispered. They need to know what the queen tried to hide. Back in the cage, the queen's voice boomed once more. Enough. Eli stood slowly. You never asked what this beast was really feeling, he shouted. You chained it, controlled it, used it to entertain a crowd that's forgotten what mercy is. The queen sneered. Mercy? That thing has killed hundreds. It was programmed to kill, Eli snapped. It didn't choose. You chose for it. A pause. Then Eli added softly, but it still chose not to kill me. The beast looked toward the queen now, expression unreadable, but its body tensed, ready to defend again if needed. Queen Virexa's claws gripped her throne. No more speeches. The test is over. One guard raised a blaster. The beast growled. The crowd rose to their feet, unsure of who they were cheering for anymore. Some shouted for the queen, but many now chanted Eli's name. Eli glanced at the beast, then stepped forward and reached up, placing a gentle hand between its horns. It's okay, he said. They saw what you are now. A broken weapon? I'm a survivor, a soul hidden behind scars and pain, just like him. As the crowd roared, the queen sat frozen. The human hadn't just tamed the monster. He had rewritten the story. No longer was the cage a place for death. It had become a place where truth broke free, and far beyond the arena, in a hidden corner of the galaxy, a spark of rebellion lit, all because a human showed compassion to a creature that everyone else feared. The arena, once full of cheering, roaring, laughing voices, fell into a strange silence. It wasn't fear. It was confusion. Thousands of aliens from different species stared down at the cage, unsure of what they were witnessing. The human, Eli Ward, stood beside the massive beast, not as prey, not as a victor, but as an equal. And the monster, once thought mindless and wild, now bowed quietly at his side. Eli stepped forward out of the cage. The crowd parted like waves, uncertain whether to cheer or run. Behind him, The beast followed. Calm, alert, powerful. Eli raised one hand in peace. "I'm not your enemy," he said, voice firm but steady. "I didn't come here to fight your traditions. But today, something changed." He pointed back at the beast. "You called it a monster. You sent it to kill, but it chose not to." He looked up toward the royal balcony. "Your queen didn't break it. She only chained it. And chains can break." Queen Virexa stood from her throne, her expression cold as steel. "Enough of this display," she barked. "This is my arena. This is my world." She stepped forward, claws shining under the sun. "No beast bends to a human unless it is broken. This one is corrupted." One of her advisors leaned close. "The people are watching." Another added, "So are the outer worlds. That footage is spreading fast." Virexa's eyes narrowed. Her power was slipping, not from an army, but from a moment of empathy she didn't understand. Then, someone in the crowd stood. A large alien with bright silver skin, a former soldier. He shouted, "I lost my brother. In this arena, we were told the beast was mindless." Eli looked up at him. "It wasn't." Another alien stood. "My cousin fought here too. His body was never returned, only a message. He failed." A third voice called out, "How many lies have we cheered for?" Now hundreds began murmuring. Whispers turned to shouts. The queen's face twisted with fury. "Silence them," she ordered. But the crowd did not fall silent. They began chanting again. Not for her, not for her warriors, for the human. "Eli, Eli, Eli," and louder. "Let him speak." Eli turned slowly to face the queen, his heart pounding. "I didn't come here to lead anyone," he said. "I didn't come here to rebel." He placed his hand gently on the beast's shoulder. "I just refuse to let one more life be used as a weapon." He took a step forward. "Maybe that's all it takes to start something new." Queen Virexa was no longer smiling. She raised one hand, and a group of black-armored guards rushed in. One shouted, "By royal order, seize the human!" The beast roared, so loud that the arena shook. The guards stopped. Its wings spread wide. Its eyes glowed not with rage, but with warning. "Come one step closer, and I will not hold back." The guards hesitated, not out of fear for the beast, but out of fear for what it now symbolized. One young alien child in the front row whispered to her father, "Papa, is that human the hero?" Her father didn't answer, because deep down, he didn't know anymore. And just like that, something broke. Not in chains, but in belief. The people who once obeyed the queen without question were now questioning everything. Eli turned one last time to the crowd. "If one human and one beast can stand together," he looked up, "maybe your world can too." That night, no one celebrated, no feasts, no dancing, only quiet fires and quiet thinking. But sometimes that's when real revolutions begin. The throne room shook with the sound of the queen's rage. Guards, servants, and advisors stood still, heads lowered, afraid to even breathe too loudly. Queen Virexa paced like a cornered beast. Her cloak dragged across the marble floor, claws clicking with every step. "That human has turned my arena into a stage," she hissed. "Turned my monster into a pet. Turned my people into doubters." An advisor tried to speak. "Your Majesty." Her tail whipped out and slammed the wall, cracking the stone. "Enough. I will not be mocked." Far across the palace, in a holding room under watch, Eli sat on the floor beside the resting beast. He ran a small scanner over its neck. "Your nerves are still damaged," he muttered, "but the control chip's gone for good." The beast let out a low hum, almost like a sigh. Outside, footsteps echoed. Multiple guards. Eli stood, calm but ready. The door opened. A tall alien noble entered. His robes were royal, but his voice was cautious. "The queen has summoned you." Eli didn't move. "She planning another cage?" "No," the noble said softly. She's planning something worse. Minutes later, Eli was brought into the arena again, this time not as a prisoner, but as a target. The stands were packed. The people had returned, but their cheering was weak, uneasy. Whispers filled the air. On the high balcony, Queen Virexa stood in armor, gleaming, black, and covered in royal symbols. Her eyes burned. "This human has humiliated our tradition," she announced. "We welcomed him. We offered him a test, and he used it to poison your minds." Murmurs stirred again. Many didn't agree, but no one dared speak. "Today," she said, "justice will be served." The ground trembled. A gate opened behind Eli. Another monster walked out, bigger, stronger. A beast not just bred, but designed for one thing, destruction. It was taller than the last, horned, clawed, with a tail like a steel whip. No eyes, only sensors built into its face. A machine beast, controlled completely. Eli's companion, the original monster, growled and stepped forward, but guards surrounded it with stun spears. It was caged again, this time without a cage. "No interference," the queen said coldly. "He dies alone." The beast charged. Eli rolled, narrowly avoiding a blade-tipped claw. He scrambled behind a broken pillar. "Oh, come on," he muttered. "You can build spaceships but still love watching people get torn apart?" The crowd didn't cheer. They watched. Some stood, some looked down. The queen's plan was not working. Then, boom. Eli was thrown across the sand by a blast, blood on his lip. He looked up, chest heaving. The machine beast closed in. Just as it raised a claw, a roar shattered the arena walls. It was not the new beast. It was the old one. His beast. The crowd turned, as the first creature leapt from the viewing area, tearing past guards, crushing spears, sprinting toward the arena center. "No." The queen screamed, "Stop it!" But it was too late. The beast slammed into the machine monster with full force. Metal screeched. Teeth met steel. The fight was no longer one-sided. It was beast versus machine. And the crowd rose to their feet. Eli struggled to stand, watching as his companion fought like a storm, dancing, dodging, biting wires, and breaking armor. The crowd was no longer quiet. They were cheering. Not for the queen, for the beast. For freedom. The final blow came, when the monster tore the power, core from the machine beast's chest and threw it to the ground. Silence again. Then a roar so loud it shook dust from the walls, and a chant, "Let him go! Let them go!" Queen Virexa stared at her people, her court, her crumbling empire. In that moment she understood something terrifying. She still had power, but she had lost their hearts. The beast turned to Eli, gently nudged him to stand. The queen stared down and said nothing, because there were no words left that could undo what the people had seen. Eli looked up and said just one thing. "You wanted a monster to kill me, but the real monster wears a crown." News traveled faster than fire. By the time the arena was cleaned, the video had already gone viral across half the galaxy. A human standing beside a creature once called a monster. A queen silenced by her own crowd. And a beast long feared, now seen as loyal, intelligent, and merciful. In the underground markets of Zarneth 9, pirates watched the clip and muttered, "That human's got more guts than a whole fleet." On the moon temples of Tixra Prime, scholars rewound the moment again and again. The creature recognized him. It chose him. And in the outer colonies, where Queen Virexa's rule had always been strictest, something new was growing. Hope. Inside. The palace, the queen sat alone, staring at a cracked screen. Her hand trembled on her throne's armrest. "He was supposed to die," she whispered. Her advisors no longer stood tall. Some avoided her eyes. Others were simply gone. One brave voice finally spoke. "You've lost the people." The queen's reply was cold. "Then we remind them who rules." Meanwhile, in the shadows of the lower city, Eli moved quietly, cloaked, with the beast beside him. They had escaped the arena, helped by secret hands, a noble, a soldier, and even a child. People who once feared him now risked their lives to protect him. They passed through old tunnels. Rusted doors opened. Safe houses welcomed them. Everywhere they went, someone whispered, "We saw what you did. You didn't fight for power. You fought for him. You showed us we've been lied to." Eli didn't give speeches. He didn't raise a flag. He just kept walking, because the truth was louder than any war cry. The beast, now stronger, no longer chained, moved with silent grace. It wore no armor, no collar, only scars, but it held its head high. Alien stepped aside to let it pass. A child reached out and touched its claw and laughed, and the creature purred. In a hidden chamber beneath the palace, resistance leaders met for the first time in years. They were old fighters, former generals, thinkers, and farmers. They had waited for a reason to rise again. Eli stood before them, confused. "I'm not a leader," he said. "I just wanted to survive." An elder shook his head. "You didn't lead with weapons. You led with choice. That is stronger." A younger fighter added, "We don't need another warrior. We need a reminder." He pointed to the beast beside Eli. "That was our reminder." Across the city, Queen Virexa sent soldiers to seize homes, silence speakers, and burn leaflets carrying Eli's face. But for every one they caught, 2 more rose. They painted the beast's image on walls. They whispered Eli's name in alleyways and schools. And in every district someone asked, if the monster chose the human, maybe the real monster wears a crown. The queen called her generals. "Crush the rebellion," she ordered. One general, eyes hard, replied, "Which one?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "There isn't one rebellion, Your Majesty. There are hundreds. And they're not just fighting." He looked her dead in the eyes. "They're thinking." Late that night, Eli sat on a rooftop watching lights flicker across the city. Small sparks, tiny fires, signs of something growing. The beast lay beside him, finally resting. Eli looked up at the stars and whispered, "I didn't plan for any of this." The beast opened one eye and slowly nodded. Below them, a quiet voice echoed in the streets. "Let the queen tremble. The cage is broken." And far beyond the city, in places the queen no longer reached, the rebellion awakened. The queen's banners fell one by one, district by district, city by city. Not because of bombs, not because of assassins, but because people stopped bowing. They painted over her face. They refused her orders. And worst of all, they told her truth. We saw the beast kneel to the human, not from fear, but from love. In the heart of the capital, Queen Virexa stood on her balcony, armored head to toe. Her voice echoed through the royal plaza. "I will give the traitor one final chance. Come forward, alone. Face your queen." She expected silence. What she got was thunder. Thousands flooded the streets, old, young, poor, noble alien workers, former warriors, and at the front, Eli, wearing no armor, holding no weapon, walking beside the beast. The crowd parted for him. He walked slow. Every step echoed, not like a soldier, but like a symbol. Queen Virexa looked down from her throne steps. "You turned my people against me." Eli stopped at the foot of the palace stairs. "No," he said softly. "You did that yourself." She snarled. "You are a human, a cage-born fool. What do you know of power?" "I know power doesn't live in fear," he replied. "It lives in choice." He looked back at the crowd behind him. They chose truth. He looked at the beast beside him. He chose peace. And then he looked her in the eye. "And I chose not to fight your monster, but to understand him." Virexa screamed and charged. Down the steps, claws out, teeth bared, but she never reached him. The beast stepped forward and roared, not with anger, but with command, and every guard who raised a weapon stopped. Because in that moment, they saw clearly. It wasn't the queen who was feared anymore. It was the human, and what he stood for. She fell to her knees, gasping, not from wounds, but from defeat. Not a single blade had been raised. And yet, she had lost everything. The palace gates opened. The people walked in, not with fire but with open eyes. They tore down the golden flags. They unplugged the torture machines. They unlocked every cage. And at the center of it all, Eli stood, not crowned, not celebrated, just there, real. Later, when asked how he did it, he only said, "I looked at the monster and saw myself." That's where it started. The beast stayed by his side, not as a weapon, not as a servant, but as a friend. They rebuilt the city together, one broken chain at a time, and far across the galaxy stories spread, of a queen who ruled with claws and a human who broke no bones, but broke the cycle. He didn't start a war. He ended one. With kindness. They called him many things. The cage walker, the beast whisperer, the man who spoke gently to monsters. But history remembered him best as the human who broke the chain.